Have you ever woken up feeling like the day has already started badly, before you even got out of bed? Anxiety, worries, arguments at home, heavy thoughts, all of these seem to take over early in the morning. And that's precisely why today, I'm going to show you something that can change your life in the early hours of the morning. I'm not talking about a motivational technique or positive phrases. I'm talking about a powerful spiritual secret, praying this psalm first thing in the morning. And I'll tell you bluntly, if you do this, you'll feel peace invade your home, as if someone had opened a window and let the light in. It's not theory, it's not just fancy words, it's real. This psalm carries such a powerful promise that it has the power to silence the confusion, trying to take over your mind and bring a calm that changes the entire atmosphere. Pay attention. The first thing you do in the morning determines how your day will go. If you wake up already thinking about your problems, you attract heaviness, discouragement, and even arguments at home. But when you choose to start the day putting God first, the atmosphere changes. It's as if heaven itself opens up before you. Today, I'm going to show you how this simple action can transform not only your morning, but your entire life. Stay with me, because once you understand the power of this prayer, you'll never want to start a day without it again. Now you understand that this prayer isn't just words, but a powerful weapon, capable of changing your morning, your home, and even the course of your entire day. Those who experience this truth feel the difference in their skin and carry a peace that no one can take away. And precisely because you've received something so transformative, it makes perfect sense to share it with more people. So strengthen this message by liking and subscribing to the channel right now. This way, you'll help bring this same change to other lives and ensure you'll receive future content that will deepen this experience even further. Have you ever noticed that when we're going through a difficult time, we almost always end up remembering a verse from the Psalms? It's as if they were written to span generations, yet remain relevant, speaking directly to the heart. And the truth is this: the Psalms are much more than pretty words. They carry a spiritual power capable of completely transforming the environment within you and around you. This is no exaggeration. Anyone who has experienced it knows that praying with the Psalms not only brings calm but also opens a space for God to act in practical ways in life. It's as if each line is a reminder that you are not alone, that there is someone greater taking care of the details. The interesting thing is that unlike many prayers we hastily invent, the Psalms are already a ready-made prayer, inspired by God, time-tested and full of promises. When you recite, for example, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want," you're not just repeating an ancient phrase. You're declaring aloud a spiritual truth that spans centuries. This changes everything, because the moment you speak, your mind begins to believe, and your heart fills with faith. Anxiety fades, insecurity diminishes, and you begin to face the day's problems differently. And you know what's even more curious? Many people only remember to pray psalms in moments of despair, when the situation is already out of control. But the secret is to use these words every day, in the morning, even before leaving for work, before facing traffic, before dealing with problems at home. This consistency creates a kind of invisible shield. Those who already have this habit know the difference is striking. Days when prayer is present seem to flow more smoothly, even when difficulties arise. But on days when you forget to pray, everything seems heavier. Every little thing gets you worked up, and even small things become a major problem. And don't think this is just a matter of having a positive mindset. It's not just about thinking good thoughts to feel better. Here we're talking about real spirituality, about words that carry the power of God. And perhaps you've even felt this without realizing it. How many times after listening to a psalm or praying sincerely has the atmosphere in your home become calmer? How many times has a tense atmosphere changed after a sincere prayer? This is no coincidence. This is the power of the word at work. In fact, I'd like you to comment on one word here to confirm that you understand this power. Write peace below in the comments, because that way I'll know you're with me, that you're receiving this message and truly allowing it to enter your life. This interaction is important not only for me but also for you to realize that you're taking a different step, that you're putting into practice what you're learning. Another thing worth considering: the Psalms were written in times of war, persecution, betrayal, and despair. David, for example, who wrote much of them, lived amidst battles and enemies who sought his death. And even in this scenario he declared, "Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me." This means that if those words were enough to strengthen someone in the midst of real danger, they are also enough to strengthen you in the challenges you face today. Your valley of the shadow of death may be an overdue bill, illness in the family, unrelenting anxiety, or loneliness that seems suffocating. Whatever it may be, the Psalms remain a surefire remedy to soothe the heart and bring direction. And when you understand this, you realize there's no prayer too complicated to pray. You don't need complicated words, elaborate phrases, or long speeches. Just open your mouth and recite the verses. It's as if you're feeding your soul the right food first thing in the morning. Those who start the day this way are unlikely to end the day the same way they started, because the initial heaviness gives way to lightness. It's like leaving home carrying a burden, and halfway there, someone comes along and lifts that weight off your shoulders. That's what it feels like to start the day with the Psalms. Now think about it. How many things have you tried that promise to change your life? Productivity methods, motivational quotes, inspirational videos. Maybe they helped for a few days, but then the routine took its toll again. The difference is that the Psalms don't lose their power. They're not a passing fad, they're eternal. That's why so many people find in them the answer to what seemed hopeless. When your mind is full of negative thoughts, praying a psalm is like turning on a light in a dark room. It doesn't take much, a small flame makes all the difference, and there's more. When you pray psalms out loud, it's not just you who hears. The whole room hears. People around you notice something different. They feel an atmosphere of peace. This can even prevent arguments at home, bring more unity, and create a sense of security. It's as if an invisible wall has been erected around your family. It may seem simple, but the secret lies in that simplicity. And look, don't think you need to pray all the Psalms at once. Start with one. Choose the one that speaks most strongly to your heart. Repeat it for a few days, meditate on it, and declare each phrase as if you were signing a contract with God. Make it a habit. Over time, you'll notice that your spiritual life will gain strength, your mind will calm down more quickly, and even your relationships will change. And now comes the most interesting part. There's a reason the Psalms work so well, and that reason has everything to do with the next point we'll discuss, because it's not just prayer that transforms, but how it's done and the space it occupies in your routine. And that's precisely what I want to show you next, because there's a huge difference between praying occasionally and making prayer a lifestyle. Therein lies the key that separates those who merely seek help in times of crisis from those who truly experience peace every day. Do you know what many people's biggest mistake is? Treating prayer as if it were an emergency room. They only seek it when the situation is already out of control, when the pain is severe, when the crisis seems unbearable. Then, at that moment, the person bends the knee, cries, begs, pleads, promises to change. But as soon as things get a little better, they forget, go back to the rush, get distracted by their problems, and abandon the practice. It's like that friend who only shows up when they need a favor. You even help, but realize there's no commitment, only interest. And here's the hard truth. Prayer offered only as an emergency may provide momentary relief, but it never creates lasting transformation. What truly changes lives is when prayer stops being a last-minute help and becomes a lifestyle. Making prayer a part of your day is like breathing. You don't wait until you're out of breath to decide to breathe, right? It's natural, automatic, constant. This is how prayer should be, something that becomes part of your routine, your way of life. When this happens, it's not just your spirit that changes, but also your mind, your body, your decisions, your way of reacting to what happens. It's amazing how people who live in prayer have more balance in situations that would leave anyone despairing. It's as if they carry a reserve of peace that never runs out. Many people think that living in prayer means spending hours and hours on your knees in a closed room. That's not the case. Prayer as a lifestyle is simple. It's being in constant conversation with God amidst the daily grind. You can pray while washing the dishes, driving to work, taking a shower, or walking down the street. These are sincere, quick, often even silent words, but they keep your heart connected to heaven. This creates a connection that changes everything, and therein lies the difference between those who pray occasionally and those who have made prayer their way of life. And I'll be blunt, Those who only pray when they need to will always feel at a disadvantage. You'll be putting out fires, always reacting to problems. But those who already live in prayer are prepared even before difficulties arise. It's like an athlete. The runner who trains every day doesn't suffer as much when the day of the race arrives. Now, those who never trained and decide to run only when it's time to race will break down halfway through. Prayer is this daily training that strengthens you for the invisible battles that suddenly appear. I know you might be thinking, but I don't have time. The truth is, time isn't the problem, it's a priority. We all spend time on our phones, scrolling through social media, watching things that often don't add anything. If some of that time were invested in prayer, the difference would be enormous. It's not about quantity, but about consistency. 5 minutes of prayer every day are worth more than an hour of prayer, only when desperation strikes. Consistency is what takes root. And you know what's amazing? When prayer becomes a lifestyle, it even shapes your thoughts. Things that once took away your peace no longer carry the same weight. Words that once hurt no longer find their place. Situations that once left you feeling overwhelmed now seem smaller. This doesn't mean problems disappear, but you learn to deal with them differently. The problem may persist, but you're no longer the same person you were when faced with it. Now, pay attention to this. Turning prayer into a lifestyle doesn't just change you, it changes your home. When you're someone who prays constantly, the atmosphere of the place you live begins to change. Your children notice, your spouse notices, even visitors notice. It's as if there's a presence of peace in the air. And this peace comes not because you're perfect, but because your life is constantly connected to the right source. I'd like you to write the word prayer in the comments, so I know you understand what I'm talking about and are willing to put it into practice. This small action will serve as a public commitment that you want to take this step of making prayer a part of your daily routine, not as a last resort, but as your first choice. And let me tell you something important. Those who make prayer a lifestyle experience things others will never understand. It's like having a direct line to God, a connection that seems absurd to outsiders, but is completely real. You begin to notice quick answers, situations that resolve themselves without logical explanation, doors that open, thoughts that align, decisions that come easier. It's as if heaven becomes a constant ally. Now think about it. If praying every now and then brings relief, imagine what happens when prayer becomes part of who you are. And there's a very special detail to all this. A secret that explains why prayer can impact not only you, but also the environment around you, creating an atmosphere so powerful it can even change the course of a difficult situation. That's precisely what we're going to talk about next, because there's a power in faith that transforms not only the one praying, but also everything around them. Maybe you've never stopped to think about it, but your faith isn't confined to yourself. It overflows. The way you believe, the words you speak, and even the prayers you say have the power to transform the environment you're in. That's why when someone enters a home where faith exists, they feel something different, as if there's a peace in the air, a tranquility that's hard to explain. In places where faith is lacking, where there's only murmuring and despair, the atmosphere is heavy, everything seems to go wrong, and even conversations revolve around intractable problems. This proves that faith isn't just something internal, but a living energy that shapes its surroundings. Think about it. How many times have you walked into a room where no one was saying anything, yet you still felt something strange, heavy? And how many times have you walked into another place where everything seemed to flow, where even the silence felt light? This isn't by chance. It happens because the atmosphere is created by what people carry within themselves, and faith is one of the greatest elements in shaping this climate. When you pray, believe, and speak words of life, you're not just strengthening yourself, you're changing the air, changing the atmosphere. Your home can become a place of peace simply because you've decided to cultivate faith there. And I'll be even more blunt. A lack of faith also shapes environments. A home filled with complaints, negative words, constant arguments, and despair will never be a place of rest. On the contrary, everyone who lives there will feel a constant weight. But when someone decides to break this cycle and bring faith into their home, things begin to align. Conversations become healthier, relationships become lighter, and even problems that once seemed enormous begin to be faced with more clarity. It's as if faith reorganizes things from the inside out. And this isn't theory, it's practice. You may have experienced situations like this yourself. Perhaps at some point in your life you prayed at home, perhaps even without much expectation, and suddenly noticed the mood change, the tension ease, something different take over. This is faith working beyond you. That's why it's so important to make prayer a daily routine, because it nourishes faith. And a constantly nourished faith not only protects your mind, but creates an invisible wall around your family. Now I want you to do something to actively participate in this message. Write the word faith in the comments. This will be like a public act, a way for you to declare that you believe your faith can indeed transform the environment in which you live. It may seem like a small detail, but this gesture is already a way of exercising your belief and putting into practice what you're learning here. And pay attention to one important thing. Faith doesn't just work when you feel something. It also works when you decide to believe, even without feeling anything. Often the atmosphere in your home may be heavy, cluttered, and full of confusion, and you may not even feel like praying. But it's precisely at this moment that faith needs to be activated. It's when you open your mouth and begin to speak words of life that the atmosphere begins to change. It's like turning on a light in a dark room. It may still be heavy at first, but little by little the atmosphere changes. And there's an even deeper detail here. Faith has a direct impact on the people around you. When you begin to cultivate a strong faith within your home, even those who don't believe or who are distant end up being influenced. They may not admit it, but they feel it. The presence of peace, the change in atmosphere, the calm that was previously absent. All of this begins to touch their hearts. How many times have rebellious children, distant spouses, or discouraged relatives been transformed because someone in the family decided to live by faith? This happens because faith is contagious. It spreads, creating an atmosphere where even those who don't believe are impacted. And look, science has even studied something similar. Research shows that environments of constant prayer and meditation generate less stress, greater well-being, and even physical changes in the body. Now, if even science can perceive the effects, imagine what happens on a spiritual level. Faith isn't just positive thinking, it's a force that connects you with God Himself. And when this happens, there's no heaviness, confusion, or darkness that lingers for long in your environment. I know you might be thinking, okay, but how do I start putting this into practice? It's simple. Start by choosing what you'll declare within your home. Instead of complaining, use words of gratitude. Instead of focusing on the problem, pray about the solution. Read a psalm aloud. Declare promises of peace. Ask God to fill the space with His presence. It doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be long. It just needs to be consistent. It's this consistency that will create the atmosphere you desire. And the most impressive thing is that when you start living this, your home becomes a refuge. No matter the chaos outside, when you enter your home, you feel peace, a safe place. This doesn't mean there won't be problems, but it does mean the environment won't be dominated by them. Faith will keep the atmosphere under control, bringing calm where there was once anxiety. Now, think about this. If your faith has the power to change the atmosphere in your home, imagine what it can do when you start expanding it to other places. Work, school, relationships, everything can be impacted. And there's a special reason for this, something that goes beyond the simple fact of believing. It's about the intensity with which you give of yourself, the way you manage the energy you expend in each interaction. This is a detail few people realize, but it makes all the difference in your spiritual journey. One thing almost no one talks about, but which makes all the difference in the spiritual journey, is the role of imagination in faith. It seems strange because many people think that imagining is childish, fantasy, and worthless. But the truth is that imagination is one of the most powerful tools God has placed within you. When you pray, and at the same time visualize the answer, the victory, the transformation taking place, your faith gains a strength that words alone cannot achieve. It's as if you're creating a mental photograph of what doesn't yet exist, but is already real in the spiritual world. Think about how many times you've imagined a bad situation before it happened. You created a fearful scenario in your mind, and that was enough to make you anxious, nervous, and even paralyzed. This proves the power of imagination. If it can make you sick when used wrongly, it can also lift you up when used right. And here's a very important point. True faith isn't just about abstract belief. It's also about seeing with your mind's eye what doesn't yet exist. Want a practical Example, when you read a protective psalm and declare, 1,000 may fall at your side and 10,000 at your right hand, but it will not come near you. It's not just a matter of repeating it mechanically. It's about seeing yourself protected, about imagining yourself surrounded by this promise, about seeing danger falling away while you remain steadfast. This isn't an illusion. It's spiritual vision. It's bringing to mind what God has already said is reality. And the curious thing is that this isn't just a matter of religion. Many experts talk about the power of visualization, even in areas like sports, business, and health. High-performance athletes, for example, before competing, imagine themselves running, winning, and getting every detail right. This practice increases the chances of success because the mind has already been trained to believe it's possible. Now imagine when this practice is combined with faith in God and prayer. Then you can't go wrong. You're not just training your mind. You're aligning your vision with what heaven has already declared for you. And here's the secret. Prayer accompanied by imagination not only strengthens faith, but creates a sense of reality so strong that peace takes over, even before the answer arrives. When you can see yourself healed even while still sick, see yourself free even while still trapped in a problem, see yourself at peace even while still in the midst of war, you've already begun to experience victory. It's as if you're drawing the future into the present. This is spiritual vision. Maybe you're thinking right now, but I can't imagine anything. My mind only thinks about problems, and that's precisely where the key lies. You need to train your mind. Just as the body needs exercise to gain strength, your imagination needs to be directed every day. Start small. Read a psalm aloud and close your eyes. Imagine each word happening to you. If the psalm speaks of green pastures, see yourself resting in peace. If it speaks of protection, see yourself surrounded by angels. If it speaks of victory, see yourself overcoming obstacles. This training will shape your spiritual vision and make your faith more alive. And let me tell you something, it's not a sin to dream big. On the contrary, believing in small things is even easier, but it doesn't bring about transformation. When you use your imagination to visualize the impossible becoming reality, you're expanding your faith. God isn't limited, so why should you limit yourself? How many times in the Bible do we see examples of people who, even without seeing anything concrete, dared to believe in the greatest? Abraham saw himself as the father of a multitude before he even had a son. David saw himself as a victor over Goliath when he was still just a boy with a stone in his hand. The difference between them and many today wasn't just believing, it was seeing beyond reality. And here's a question that might move you. How have you been using your imagination? Has it served to drown you in scenarios of fear and failure, or to fuel your faith in victories that have yet to materialize? Write the word vision in the comments so I know you're determined to train your mind differently. This simple act will mark a public commitment that you will stop using your imagination as an enemy and start using it as an ally of your faith. Now, think about how many times you've stopped praying because you couldn't believe something would change. What was missing wasn't faith, it was vision. You couldn't see yourself living what you prayed for. This is why many prayers lack power. The mouth speaks, but the mind doesn't follow. When the mind and mouth are aligned, when you speak and see at the same time, it's as if faith is multiplied. This is what opens doors, attracts answers, and brings peace before the solution appears. And I want you to remember this. Faith without vision is like a car without fuel. You may have the vehicle, but it won't move. Imagination is the fuel that makes faith move. When you learn to see beyond, you're no longer limited by circumstances. The overdue bill ceases to be an unbearable burden because you see yourself free from it. Illness no longer dominates because you see yourself standing tall and healthy. Fear no longer controls because you see yourself winning. This practice may seem simple, but it's incredibly powerful. And here comes the detail that will open your eyes even further. Spiritual vision isn't limited to what you want to achieve. It also helps you align your energy with what God has already prepared. That's what we'll talk about next, because there's no point in having faith and using your imagination without being in tune with the right source. There's a way to align all of this with the energy you carry and spread, and that's what will determine whether your vision becomes just a dream or a tangible reality. Let me tell you something that can completely change the way you see your spiritual journey. The energy you carry directly influences what you attract and what you push away from your life. It may seem like an abstract conversation, but it's not. The truth is, everything you feel, say, and think conveys something. When you're filled with anger, anxiety, and despair, it doesn't just stay hidden inside. It overflows, and the entire environment senses it. But when you're attuned to faith, hope, and trust in God, this energy creates a different atmosphere, lighter, more supportive, more aligned. It's like a radio frequency. If you're on the wrong channel, you'll only hear noise. But when you tune in correctly, the sound becomes clear and everything makes sense. And the main point here is to understand that prayer and faith must go hand in hand with this harmony. There's no point in praying for peace if you spend the whole day harboring thoughts of fear. There's no point in asking for miracles if your mouth constantly spouts words of defeat. The energy you carry needs to be aligned with the prayer you say. When there's harmony, everything starts to fall into place. That's when you start to notice small changes, arguments that don't explode, problems that find solutions more quickly. People who previously avoided you now approach you. Opportunities that seemed distant begin to emerge. But there's one detail many people overlook. This connection doesn't just depend on words, it depends on emotional awareness. Many people think, spirituality is just praying, going to church, and repeating verses. But if someone doesn't learn to manage their own emotions, they'll always be stuck in the same cycle. How many times have you seen someone who prays a lot but is constantly exploding with anger? Or someone who knows the Bible inside and out but harbors envy and resentment? This proves that true spirituality requires emotional maturity. You need to understand your feelings, acknowledge your weaknesses, and choose not to be a slave to them. And here's a practical example. Imagine someone who wakes up in a bad mood and starts the day complaining. The atmosphere in the house changes. Everyone becomes tense. It's as if a dark cloud hangs over the room. Now imagine someone who, despite their problems, decides to take a deep breath, say a prayer, give thanks for being alive, and start the day with positive words. The mood changes. The people around them notice the difference. This is emotional awareness combined with faith. You don't ignore what you feel, but you decide not to let your emotions dominate you. You choose to align with the right energy. And maybe you're thinking, okay, but I can't control what I feel. Indeed, no one can control the arrival of emotions, but we can all choose what to do with them. Anger, sadness, fear, all of these can knock on the door, but you decide whether to let them in and make a home or whether to set limits. Prayer helps balance, but emotional awareness is what prevents you from living in endless ups and downs. When you understand your triggers and learn to react differently, your energy shifts. And when your energy shifts, everything around you begins to transform. Now, pay attention to something very serious. When you combine spiritual attunement with emotional awareness, your faith takes on another dimension. You're no longer hostage to circumstances. Even if things fall apart on the outside, you remain steadfast on the inside. And this is so strong that it infects others. How many times have you met someone who, even going through enormous struggles, seemed to exude calm and hope? This person understood how to align energy, faith, and emotion. This is what makes spirituality practical, concrete, and transformative. And I want you to actively participate in this moment. Write the word energy in the comments. This simple gesture is a sign that you're willing to pay attention to your frequency and how your emotions have influenced your life. This interaction isn't just for engagement. It's also a way for you to make a public commitment to change. The most impressive thing is that when you start living this way, your life is no longer controlled by ups and downs. You gain control over your feelings, not because you've become cold or indifferent, but because you've learned to align your emotions with your faith. You begin to respond instead of just react. And this brings peace not only to you, but also to everyone around you. Now, you've realized how this content opened your mind and showed you in a practical way how to transform your faith into something living, capable of changing you and your surroundings. If this message brought clarity, peace, and direction, it's natural that you want to see more people impacted in the same way. And this is where your role comes in. Liking and subscribing to the channel is the way to spread this transformation and ensure that this chain of faith continues to reach more and more lives. And to mark this moment, comment below, Transformation because it is proof that you received something new today. And look, what comes in the next video will move you even more, because we'll delve into a point few have the courage to talk about, but which is exactly what separates those who simply pray from those who truly experience visible answers. Don't leave it there, because the revelation that's coming will surprise you and could be the turning point in your journey.